All right, guys. So our final topic here. Unfortunately, normally our final topics are held out for like big spoiler discussions for shows and things like that, but we've already done all that with Loki airing on Wednesdays. That review's up on the channel already, so you can go watch the finale review of that. We did the Bad Batch review also on stream with that, so both those reviews are up though if you want to go check those out. So, but in similar fashion, at the very least, we do have a Marvel topic here that does tie into Loki in some ways, depending on how you look at it. But Kevin Feige recently did this big, he had an interview right where he kind of broke down the kind of Marvel process, especially now with how it relates with the multiverse and the introduction of the multiverse into the MCU, which is the primary thing I'm going to kind of focus on in this because, like I said, it does kind of connect with Loki and where that kind of stuff is right now. So, because this is a fairly large interview with a lot of different quotes from Mr. Kevin Feige. So, I'm going to scroll down though to the main one here is when he was saying, who is he speaking with here? I don't even remember who he said he was speaking with. But nevertheless, if you look this Kevin Feige multiverse up, you'll be able to find the article. Maybe if I remember, I'll drop the link down in the description if you want to read the entire article. But he goes on to say during the conversation, the multiverse like topic got brought up. And he goes on to say, as you indicated before we started recording, the multiverse is coming up in a big way. There's interconnectivity there that people have already started to see and suss out. And I had a meeting this morning with the whole broad Marvel Studios team going through the multiverse and the rules of the multiverse and exactly how to really deliver on the excitement surrounding the multiverse. And then, like, because I've thought before, I'm not sure if we've really talked about too much on the show. We probably have, but one of my concerns with the multiverse stuff, I think John and I have probably discussed this at some point, um, is just people like the general audience. Like, are they going to know what's going on? Are they going to be interested in the show? Like, are they going to be able to follow along with X, Y, and Z, like Earth 616, and like, are they going to start? Like, how deep are they going to go? And is it going to lose some people? Because Marvel has always done a very good job with like, even though their entire 20 some odd movies and now their TV shows are all part of a big connected story. Kevin Feige has always made each movie in a way that you can jump in and just start watching wherever they're at. Like if Loki was the first thing you saw, you can watch it. It's a complete story in and of itself. You're not going to be lost. You know what I mean? Like they've done a really good job about doing that while also having everything have a connected thread to it. So yeah, if you watch it and you've seen everything else, you'll get more out of it, but you're not going to be completely lost. I know people who literally saw Infinity War and Endgame, and that was the first thing that they saw in Marvel, and they were able to pick up on it just fine. They knew where everything was at. But like with the multiverse stuff, it could quite honestly start getting kind of confusing for people. So that's been a kind of a worry that not just me, but a lot of people have had, like with the introduction of the multiverse. But it's like Kevin Feige would, it seems like he at least has a plan on it, because he goes on to say that, like, there are some things that, like, they will not like, there will be things that he'll want to include and, like, do as part of the overarching story. He'll only do it so long as it does not impact the individual projects. So, like, for instance, he said, like, something will come up, one show, and we'll have to sometimes call and say, "Well, actually, we've got to alter this, we've got to change that," but never to the detriment of the individual projects. So that's still his primary focus, which is my point here. Like, he's still going with that as the primary goal. So it kind of eases my mind with it more so than anything, because like with the multiverse stuff, like they literally have like a multiverse meeting room at Marvel now, which is like I could just see at some point kind of getting confusing, not just for other people, but for the general audience in general. Like not just for the general audience, but for the people working at Marvel. Like, because I mean, they've gotten to the point where they have to have multiversal meetings, which eh, it's just I don't know. It could be a slippery slope. But it goes on to actually comment about educating the broader public. And it says, because like with so much with Marvel, that this is a topic when we first had Sam Jackson appear in a cameo at the end of Iron Man, I thought it would be a relatively small group of people that were excited by that and that we'd have to educate the broader public about what that meant and who Nick Fury was. But almost instantly, if you remember way back in summer 2008, it ignited everyone's imagination. It says, in the same way, the multiverse is something we geek out about and we really love and all storytelling potential it brings, but thought we had to dull out what it was introducing the concept even briefly in Doctor Strange and then as a fake out in Spider-Man Far From Home. And then he goes on to wrap this up here with Kevin Feige expressed that it's more than just fans who are following the slow development of the multiverse MCU. And he says, I will tell you something, it is more than just fans that are following along with the multiverse storyline. It's really exciting to even see it midway through the Loki series now as people respond to the possibilities. But again, my point with that is like, I know there are people out there who the Loki series didn't really work for them because they were kind of confused as to what was going on. So I don't know. I'm just reading this whole thing, and there's more to it if you go through and read every single like bit of this interview. It reassures me that like he still knows that. I mean, not that I had any doubts, but just that he's still keeping a focus on the individual movie itself, as opposed to just wanting to go crazy with multiverse.
I think
You know what I
as they
mean?
should focus on the movies itself as well. I mean, that's like you said, you don't want to take people out of like what they're familiar with and stuff just to like, I feel like appease like the more hardcore comic fans and all that that know the story better. They've got to make something that's like entertaining and easy to follow. And, if they go too deep into that, I think it just takes things off the beaten path too much.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing too, because even on our show here, because you don't really follow Marvel like
Not as
as
much, no.
that's what I'm saying. So like, if you're sitting there, like if you jump in the middle of some, Loki, for instance, and if Loki was the only thing you've seen, like, or how much
Ever.
did you even follow Loki? Now I'm
I
really thinking
followed
about
it
it.
pretty well. I mean, I watched every bit of it.
Well, I guess this is a good point too, because I remember during our spoiler discussion, you didn't know that He Who Remains was Kang.
Yeah, I had no idea.
And that's the thing, like, but the show still worked for you, did it not?
Yeah. Yeah, it was still entertaining to watch. They did a good job with making it, as somebody who's not as like fluent as a Marvel fan or anything like that. I like Marvel. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing against it. I'm just not like as into it as I am like Star Wars. It was still easy to follow and it was still easy to understand what was going on just as like a casual viewer.
Exactly. Which to my point, I think this article more so just reassured that even with the introduction of the multiverse, he still he still only wants to like they're only going to introduce anything like that as long as it's not a detriment to the actual show that they're working on.
Yeah, which
Which
makes sense.
well, no, it does make sense because, like I said, it's what they've been doing since day one. So I don't know why anyone would really doubt it. You know what I mean? Like I don't think they're just going to like all of a sudden just start being lazy and making things confusing and etc.
Yeah.
I still have the fear though that like depending on how wacky they end up going, not so much that it would be confusing, just that it's not always very appealing to the general audience. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because as you start to get more into the multiverse stuff, you start to be really more like sci-fi. And sci-fi is really not like all that big of a thing for the general audience. Like it loses a lot of people. It
Yeah.
alienates the audience in a lot of ways just because it's just something they're not really like used to, not really into, and it's like a big deviation from what they're used to and what they've come to expect with a Marvel movie. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I hope they don't really. I don't want to see them try to go too wild, and then even though like I'll probably love it. Like, cause that stuff is like I'm a genre fan. Like I like sci-fi stuff. You like sci-fi stuff, even if you don't really follow Marvel that much. Like you love Star Wars,
Oh yeah.
like you love even though Star Wars more sci-fi fantasy, it's still sci-fi. Like, but
Oh
it's
yeah, it's 100%.
yeah, but it's not like it's not like Battlestar and
Or like
just Star.
Stargate or
Yes, yeah, I mean like that kind of stuff, and like
Star
that's
Trek even.
yeah. So we'll just have to wait and see. Like my main takeaway with this is that like everyone out there who is worried about it, which I'm not gonna lie, I have my worry that it could be problematic for the general audience, the more broad public. But this was a little bit of reassurance. I mean, they literally have multiversal meetings now, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah, that is
But
interesting, but I mean, I guess it's
no, you kind of have to. Like,
necessary, yeah.
yeah. But either way, we'll just have to kind of wait and see because then this goes on to the fact that Tom Hiddleston is now set to appear in Doctor Strange. This is not technically set in stone, but the Hollywood Reporter did write an article saying that they have heard from their sources that he is going to be appearing in Doctor Strange,
Yeah.
which given the whole ending of the show, spoiler alert out there, like, it totally makes sense. You know what I mean? And, like, given the fact that they've been meeting more and more about the multiverse, and now they have these multiversal meetings. The only thing I really kinda got from this too is that, like, I always was under the assumption before that, uh, the multiverse was gonna be kind of over after Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness,
Yeah.
but the fact that, like, they're now, like, doing the like, Kevin Feige said that they're having multiversal kind of meetings. I'm wondering if it's actually gonna kind of just actually be a thing going forward, like, they're gonna have the full-on multiverse just exist so that they can maybe do what DC's doing and tell, like, standalone stories or something,
Yeah.
and have it not affect the continuity of the MCU, like we talked about last week, I think it was last week anyway, but, Joaquin Phoenix was going to be Doctor Strange initially, but he didn't wanna sign on for this big, multi-movie deal. But if they're doing a multiverse, they could say that, they could have had Joaquin come in and do a one-off Doctor Strange movie
Yeah.
and just say it's, a multiverse thing. It's a what if, story or an Elseworlds thing, as DC calls it. It's like, here it is. Like Marvel has what if, and there's the what if, animated series coming out. But what if it's a comic line. Like they have a bunch of different what if stories, and it's just like the show, what if Black Panther was a Ravager? Like, and they just do that. So I could
What
see
if
them keeping the multiverse alive in the MCU and not completely shutting it off, just so they actually have a little bit more freedom to tell stories outside of the MCU.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because honestly, I would think that if they were to go that route, which is kind of the way DC's going now, I would actually like that. Because I don't think everything needs to be tied to the damn MCU. Like, it just because at some point it does kind of become a crutch
Yeah.
because you're limited. Like, like Black Widow, for instance. If you wanted to tell a Black Widow story, well, right now, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow died in the events of Avengers Endgame. So you can't tell a Black Widow story unless it's set in the past.
Right.
So, it complicates things. But if you're able to tell an Elseworld story, of what if, then you could do that, to
Right.
say it's a multiversal version of her, and she's, if she's like working with the Avengers, you can have an entirely different cast of Avengers in there. You can have an
Right.
entirely different Nick Fury in there. You can do whatever you wanted to do because it's a what if story.
Right. Right.
So I think that would actually be kind of cool if they end up going that route, and like maybe the fact that they are even doing the what if show in animated form is kind of a gateway to kinda let that out there, introduce it to the public, and see, if they'd be on board with that kind of thing in general. Like,
Right.
like, would you like to see them, like, tell stories? Would you like to see Marvel characters, like, existing ones, for instance, have a standalone kind of one-off
Yeah.
thing? Like Captain America, if they wanted to make a Captain America movie and just cast someone else and just tell a completely separated, like, story about that, do you think that'd be a good thing for them to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be fine.
Or do you think people would be interested in it though, or do you think that everyone's like the general public is so tied to like the MCU and the interconnectivity of it that if they found out that like, oh, they're doing this, but it's not Chris Evans and it's not, connected to the MCU, like I don't want to see that. Do you think
Yeah.
that
I
would
guess there'd be a
happen?
lot of people that probably feel that way.
I could see I because
I wouldn't, but
that would be like the downside to it, and I could see some people feeling that way about it.
yeah.
But like I said, that's what DC's kind of doing now with like, the Batman.
Yeah.
And that's how they're gonna do all their movies now. I don't see anybody saying like, "Pshaw, I'm not gonna go see the Batman because it's not
Right.
connected to Justice League."
Right. Nobody's saying.
Yeah, so, like, I could see some people having hesitations with it because I do think one of the big draws for the general audience when it comes to Marvel is the fact that it's this giant soap opera,
Yeah.
and it's all connected because 'cause you're invested in it, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like they've been around for, whatever, 10, 15 years almost at this point, 20 some odd movies. Like, I
Right.
think that's a big appeal. But I also, like I said, I think it can be quite a big detriment, man. Like, because you just lose the freedom of being able to tell your individual stories,
Right.
Like, so.